Whew, what's going on? What's going on? No. Man, Deontay Wilder versus not Anthony Joshua, versus Tyson Fury. Fight just finished. Oh man, it was a crazy fight. Wilder showed a lot of heart, but this just was not going to be his night. A lot of people were talking about how all that extra weight was going to be an issue for him. I didn't think it was going to be an issue for him. I just thought that just due to the fact that he had been pretty much rocking this weight for a very long time, a year and a half, that it was going to be fine when it came to that. And it wasn't going to be a problem. It wasn't going to be an issue. Um, Wilder came into the fight. He was throwing his jabs too heavy. I don't know. I'm not sure why exactly he was throwing the jabs that heavy. I figured, go ahead, throw the jab or just touch him a little bit. Touch him a little bit. But he was throwing the jab, real heavy. It was moving Tyson Fury a little bit, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, doing that type of work is an accumulation. You know what I mean? 5, 6, 7 rounds of doing that. It's when you tire somebody out. And once you tire somebody out, then you go ahead and you start going to the head. He kind of only did that for a couple of rounds before, like 1 or 2 rounds, before then starting to go pretty much, up top to Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury kind of weathered the storm with it. He took the punches. And from there, he kind of just started doing his thing, whether it be throwing his jabs, whether it be mauling on Wilder, leaning on him, doing what he does. And then ended up, catching Wilder because Wilder still was kind of making some. He's improved, but at the same time, he still was kind of making some of the same mistakes he was making before. Holding on, keeping himself wide open. Where this guy can catch you into the side of the head and knock you down and things of that nature. He was still doing that. Later on in the fight, when you're tired, and the guy's throwing punches at you, pulling back, which is something that you shouldn't do, and he was doing that as well. But he showed a lot of heart. Wilder was put down to the ground. He came back up, fought like a warrior, ended up putting Tyson Fury down. Put Tyson Fury down the first time. Tyson Fury got up, caught Tyson Fury a second time. Tyson Fury was wobbly. He was kind of just standing there. But Wilder didn't time his punch. He wasn't patient with it. He could have caught Tyson Fury with an uppercut. He might have been able to catch him with a straight right, but he didn't aim his punch. Maybe even catch him with a hook, but he didn't really time the hook or aim the hook. So it kind of ended up hitting Tyson's body with his elbow, and Tyson Fury pretty much dropped because he was out of it. He was out of it at that time. That was the time to have put him. Was the time to have put him away. That was the time to put him away. If he had caught him with a punch at that particular time, I think he would have put him out. He could have put him out and he could have ended the fight right there. But that's not what happened. Tyson Fury got up in about 8 seconds or so, and which another big reason I believe if Wilder had caught him with another punch at that particular time, he wouldn't have been able to get up. He might have got up, but I don't think it would have been under 10 seconds. But Wilder didn't hit him with that punch because he wasn't aiming it. He didn't aim it correctly. And they went on fighting, and Wilder just started to look gassed. It was like the fifth round. Fourth round, he was just gassed. You could tell he was just gassed, but he was just trying to, he's just his warrior spirit. He was trying to stay in it. He was trying to grind. He was hit with a bunch of shots, and went down again, came back up, kept fighting, got hurt a bunch of times, but kept fighting. There was one round when he had hurt Tyson Fury again with the uppercut, but it was at the end of the round, and they were talking about it in the podcast or whatever, not the podcast, whatever. The people that were over there were talking about it that they think maybe Wilder might have done something to his right hand. Because I remember there was one time where he caught the same combination he caught Dominic Brazil with and took him out. He caught Tyson Fury with that same combination. Boom, blind him with the ref. Boom, and come with the straight right. The straight right hit Tyson Fury flush and did nothing. Absolutely nothing, which means basically there was nothing at all behind that punch. Because again, that was another punch that usually that punch hits, that punch is supposed to take you out of there. That thing's supposed to send you to the next dimension. And that's not what happened. It did absolutely nothing. So he was at that point he was spent. Tyson Fury knew it. But Tyson Fury knew he just had to just keep pushing the issue, mauling on him, staying on him, pushing on him, and eventually he's going to get out of there. And Wilder's still doing the same thing, kind of hands down, not protecting himself, correctly. The guys in front of you got to be in there. You can't just be sitting there with your face out like this. If you're gonna do all that, stay inside of him. That inside boxing, which he was throwing a few uppercuts, but I don't really think he truly worked on it to the levels that he should have been able. She should have worked on it. Like he needs to. You gotta be able to have that inside game, especially when you're facing somebody a lot taller than you, and he just didn't have it. But he was exhausted, spent, but he kept trying. He kept trying. He kept trying, and because he had his head down like that, he just got caught with a shot that put him down, and the referee pretty much stopped the bout. And Tyson Fury is a champion, and right now Tyson Fury is solidified as the best in the world. Period. You know what I mean? At the same type of kind of gloves, but it's different this time because Tyson Fury knew about that glove. Deontay Wilder knew about those gloves, and what he decided to do was like, hey, I'm going to change my gloves. That's what he decided he was going to do, and Tyson Fury put it on him. Tyson Fury, he weathered the storm that he needed to weather, and like I said, both of them are going to be in shape. I told you I didn't care about what anybody was saying about, oh, he wasn't training, he wasn't doing this and that. I think, if the fights they have in July, I don't think he was ready at that time. But they did do whatever that quote had in that 19, supposedly. He took that time off, and that time did him great. He made sure he was prepared. He had he had plenty of stamina. He was gassed out in the beginning, but he caught his second wind, and he was good to go. And ended up putting that down to Wilder and came up victorious. You know what I mean? So, shout out to him. Salute to him for doing what he needed to do to retain his championship and to prove that he's the best. And shout out to Deontay Wilder for fighting, man. That dude kept fighting. He kept fighting. He kept fighting. He kept fighting. Kept fighting. But, this just a foe that he couldn't overcome. I always said there's only two people in the world that could beat beat Deontay Wilder. I believe that was Tyson Fury, and I believe that was Luis Ortiz. Like if he fought Luis Ortiz right now, I would say Luis Ortiz can still beat him. Those are the two fighters that I think that could beat him. Those are his kryptonites. And, Luis Ortiz wasn't able to come out victorious against him, but Tyson Fury was able to do it. And Wilder, he landed the shots he needed to land, but he couldn't finish job in time, couldn't put him out, and didn't have the same level of stamina as he did in the first fight. Because he didn't have that stamina as he did in the first fight, even though there were openings later on in the bout, there was nothing behind those punches. So this is how the crumbles. So what they say, when you got to eat your crow, you got to eat your crow. I thought Deontay Wilder was going to win this fight. I thought he was going to be victorious and come out on top, and that just didn't happen. So you got to give respect to where it's due. And where they go on from here, Tyson Fury obviously has to fight Dillian White. Hopefully he can stay focused, mentally focused. Don't win this bout, then go around and lose to that damn Dillian White. You beat Dillian White, then after that, I believe hopefully what happens is him and Usyk go for undisputed, because I don't think Anthony Joshua's beating Usyk, or whoever wins. I hope what happens after that is those fighters end up fighting for undisputed. But, but it is what it is. As far as Deontay Wilder's concerned, after that, what happened, he needs to take a couple of months off. I would say about 5-6 months off. I would say bring your weight back down to 220, get back to fighting at your normal weight. I believe I can understand his philosophy of you had to do what you had to do for this particular bout, but I don't think you need to do that for anybody else. So I would say just, get back down. I understand he wanted to retire. He wanted to win this fight. He wanted to fight like a Dillian White. He wanted to fight for undisputed. Then he wanted to retire. But what I would say is fight a couple of fights. Fight 1-2 fights, maybe 3 fights. Put yourself into a position where you can become mandatory for the IBF or the WBA. Whatever fights you need to do, to make that happen. And then, try another shot at redemption. This is one guy that beat you. This is one guy that had your number. Just because this one guy was able to do something doesn't mean everybody else could do the same thing. So that's what I would say about him. You can, depending on what he wants to do, but I could see him saying, calling it a day and retiring. But if he has another outing like this, though, especially with a lesser opponent, especially like if he does come back in like 6 months, and if he has this type of issue with a lesser opponent, then 100% you know it's time to go. You know, it's 100% time to go. You don't need to be taking that kind of punishment, especially with the massive financial masses that you've got. You know, all the gains that you've had. You know, you're making $30 million for this fight. You made 30 for the last fight. You made 20 plus for Dominic Brazil. You made 20 plus for Luis Ortiz. You know, so that's, you made over $100 million in the last 4 fights. You know, so it makes no sense. You know what I'm saying, to keep going, unless depending on what happens in your next fight. So I say take a couple months off, maybe 3 months. After that, bring that weight back down, and get back into the ring with somebody else. One fight after that, maybe 1, 2 fights, and then try to get a fight that makes you mandatory and go on from there. But it is what it is. That's the way the cookie crumbled today. You know, salute to Tyson Fury for handling his business. And I'm out. Like, subscribe, share. You know the rest.